For many years, people across the world had heard strange stories that sounded more like old legends than real events. These stories spoke about a mysterious figure that appeared only during moments of great danger, storms that struck without warning, accidents that should have taken lives but didn't, and unexplained rescues that no one could fully understand. Some people said it was just luck. Others said it was nothing more than fear mixing with imagination. But no matter how much time passed, the stories never disappeared. They stayed alive in conversations, in distant memories, and in small lines tucked inside old newspaper articles. Most people ignored these stories because life was busy and full of real problems that felt more important. But for a small group of scientists and researchers, these strange incidents always felt like a puzzle waiting to be solved. They had spent years studying storms, earthquakes, and unexplained events, hoping to understand how the world worked. One of them, a quiet atmospheric researcher, spent long nights listening to static-filled recordings from old monitoring stations. It wasn't something most people would enjoy, but for him, every piece of static had meaning. Each sound, each spike, carried information about the environment. One night, while reviewing old signals from a closed military test zone, he noticed something unusual. Under layers of crackling static, there was a faint rhythmic pattern. It wasn't a machine error or a repeating radio signal. It almost sounded like something alive, a slow, steady beat, repeating in a calm pattern. He listened to it again and again, thinking maybe he was tired or mistaken. But the pattern didn't disappear. It was there, constant, patient, almost like a heartbeat, but too strong and too distant to belong to any known creature. At first, he didn't say anything because he didn't want to sound foolish. Many scientists had damaged their careers by reporting strange signals that turned out to be nothing. But the more he studied it, the more he realized that the pattern was connected to something deeper. It matched recordings from decades ago, old signals that had once been dismissed as interference. That discovery made him feel unsettled. If the same signal had appeared long ago, why was it returning now? And what could produce something like that? As he quietly shared his findings with a few trusted colleagues, the information started to spread. Someone whispered it to someone else, and eventually, it reached a few journalists who were always searching for unusual stories. Within days, the online world filled with rumors. People began asking if the old legends were returning. Some claimed they had proof. Others made exaggerated stories to get attention. And just like that, people around the world started talking about the forgotten protector again. The term, protector, wasn't something scientists used, but it came from the old stories passed down through families. These stories told of a figure that appeared in storms, nearly invisible, like a shadow moving through wind and rain. There were tales of people saved at the last second by something they never saw clearly. While most people brushed these off as imagination or fear playing tricks, a few believed the protector was real. But the legend faded over the years, pushed aside by modern knowledge and technology. Even so, the stories had never completely disappeared. Older people still remembered hearing them as children. Some described them in quiet voices, as if they weren't sure whether they believed them or not. The new signals brought those memories back. People started searching for old photos, old videos, anything that might show a clue. Surprisingly, they found more than expected: grainy black and white footage, showing faint shapes in the background of old storms, blurred forms near collapsing buildings, flashes of light with no explanation. Nothing was clear enough to prove anything, but taken together, they formed a pattern too strange to ignore. Governments tried to calm the situation. Officials said there was no real evidence of anything unusual and asked people not to jump to conclusions. But their careful tone made the public even more curious. If there was really nothing happening, why did officials sound nervous? Why were old test zones suddenly being restricted again? And why were researchers being asked not to discuss the signals publicly? The researcher who found the original signal kept working silently, trying to understand what was waking up under the ocean, mountains, or maybe even underground. He didn't believe the protector was a creature or a myth. To him, everything in nature had an explanation. This was just another mystery, waiting to be understood. But late at night, when he sat alone with the sound of that rhythmic pattern playing softly through his headphones, he sometimes felt a strange sense of presence like the signal wasn't just noise, but a pulse from something aware. As curiosity grew, more experts joined the investigation: engineers, historians, geologists, and even retired military analysts. Some wanted to solve the mystery. Others were afraid of what the truth might be. Together, they studied every unexplained event from the last 100 years and discovered something surprising. The protector, if it existed, never harmed anything. Every recorded incident connected to the legend seemed to show help, not destruction. That thought comforted some people. But for others, the idea that something powerful existed without anyone understanding it was deeply unsettling. As the world debated online, more unusual incidents began happening. Birds changed their flight patterns in certain regions. The ocean in specific spots felt warmer than usual, despite no changes in weather. Strange vibrations were recorded deep underground, similar to the ones from the signal pattern. These clues hinted that something was moving or stirring. No one could say what it was, but it felt less like a myth and more like a presence returning after a long sleep. Meanwhile, on social media, people created theories. Some believed the protector was ancient technology left behind by a forgotten civilization. Others thought it was a natural force with no consciousness. And a few believed it was something watching over Earth, something that only appeared when the planet was in danger. No one could prove anything, but the discussions grew louder every day. Through all this, the researcher continued his work quietly. He didn't want fame or attention. His only goal was to find the truth, whatever it was. He started comparing modern signals with older ones from archives that had been locked away for decades. Many of those old files were labeled as not relevant or classified, but their contents matched perfectly with the new data. The heartbeat-like pattern had appeared many times in the past, during certain storms, during unexplained power failures, and even during rare moments when rocket equipment malfunctioned, but no disaster occurred. It became clear that the signal wasn't random. It followed a rhythm that seemed connected to Earth's natural cycles. It grew stronger during major climate events and weakened when the world was calm. And recently, it had become more active, more frequent, almost as if responding to something happening on the planet. The researcher tried to stay logical, but even he felt a growing sense of anticipation. Something was waking up or returning. Something that had been here long before any of them knew. Some experts believed the protector, if real, had gone quiet for decades because Earth didn't need help. But now, with rising tensions, climate shifts, and unexplained disturbances, it was stirring again. People around the world felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. They didn't know whether to prepare for something good or something dangerous. But everyone could sense that change was coming. The legend that once lived only in old stories was reaching back into the present, slowly pulling itself into reality. No one knew what would happen next. But deep down, many believed this was only the beginning. The more the researcher studied the signals, the more he realized that they were not random. Each signal seemed to connect to events that had happened long ago. When he started comparing old archives and videos from the 1960s and 1970s, he saw something strange. In almost every major natural disaster, there was always a shadowy blur in the background. Sometimes it was near buildings collapsing during storms, sometimes in footage of people being rescued from floods, and occasionally in images of wildfires spreading rapidly. The blur was never clear. It never looked human. It moved with speed, precision, and a calmness that no ordinary person could have doubted at first. He thought he was seeing things. Old videos from decades ago were often blurry, grainy, or damaged, and the mind could easily fill in shapes and movements. But when he lined up several events and overlaid the locations, a pattern became impossible to ignore. The blur, or whatever it was, always appeared at the right place and the right time. It seemed to anticipate disasters, arriving just in time to influence outcomes. Buildings didn't collapse in the worst ways. People were guided to safety by something invisible. Machinery was somehow redirected or stopped without human intervention. The researchers' colleagues grew excited, yet nervous. If this was true, it meant something extraordinary had been protecting Earth for decades. Quietly, without ever being recognized to understand it better. The team brought in historians who had access to secret or forgotten government records. Many of these documents had been stored for years and marked as irrelevant or unimportant. But once opened, they revealed unusual details. There were mentions of a project that began decades earlier, long before satellites could fully monitor Earth. Notes described tests and experiments, some in remote mountains, some deep underwater. The purpose of these tests was never fully explained. What became clear, however, was that the results were strange and unexplained. Some reports suggested that the tests were connected to a figure that could move faster than ordinary humans, appear in dangerous situations, and somehow influence outcomes without being seen. No one had ever confirmed whether the figure existed or was just a part of folklore mixed with secret experiments. Governments had kept information classified, possibly because they didn't fully understand it themselves. When the researcher pieced these details together, it started to form a map. Every appearance of this shadowy protector seemed to form a route circling the Earth. This route was not constant. It didn't follow roads or rivers. It didn't even follow the movement of people. Instead, it appeared to track areas of potential danger storm zones, tectonic hotspots, and even regions where large-scale accidents had occurred. The team became fascinated. They realized they were not just looking at a series of coincidences. This was something deliberate, something that seemed aware of its surroundings, aware of the people it was protecting. Every clue, every blurry image, every archived report pointed to one conclusion. The protector had been present for decades, quietly watching, quietly acting. Meanwhile, outside the labs and archives, ordinary people were noticing small signs of unusual activity. Fishermen reported strange movements in the oceans, like currents behaving differently for no reason. Farmers noticed that crops survived storms that should have destroyed them. People in certain cities reported brief flashes of light in the sky at night, often accompanied by sudden gusts of wind. Nothing destructive happened, but people remembered the old stories about a protector watching over Earth. Rumors began to spread again, quietly at first, then louder as more people shared their experiences online. The media picked up on some of these events. Stories about mysterious rescues or unexplained natural occurrences appeared in newspapers and online platforms. Scientists and reporters debated whether these events were coincidence, natural anomalies, or evidence of something beyond understanding. The public became curious. Some were fascinated, others were frightened. But everyone agreed on one thing. The old stories were coming back, and something unusual was happening. The researcher continued to dig deeper. One night, he focused on signals from a region that had experienced an unusual number of storms over the past century. When he overlaid the signal patterns with historical weather data, he found something incredible. The protector's appearances often coincided with moments when natural disasters could have caused massive loss of life. The figure never directly intervened in a way people could fully see, but somehow the outcomes were always better than expected. A bridge that should have collapsed stayed standing long enough for people to escape. A storm's direction shifted just enough to avoid a town. A fire slowed without a clear cause. The researcher realized that whatever this protector was, it had been quietly ensuring the safety of millions of people. It wasn't concerned with fame or recognition. It wasn't looking for credit. It only acted to prevent harm. The team also noticed that the protector's appearances were not constant. It seemed to appear only when there was a real need. And the longer the planet went without a major disaster, the quieter the signal became. This suggested intelligence, awareness, and a deep understanding of the planet. At the same time, the historian found something else in the old documents that shocked everyone. There were references to unusual energy readings collected by early monitoring stations that predated modern satellites. These readings indicated the presence of something very large moving beneath the Earth's surface, in oceans, and sometimes in remote mountain regions. The readings were never explained. They were filed away and forgotten. But now, in light of the new signals and the patterns the researcher had found, the readings seemed to confirm that something extraordinary existed. Something big, something aware, and something capable of acting when needed. News of the discovery started to spread outside the small research circle. People online shared their own experiences, claiming to have seen glimpses of the figure in storms or near accidents. Some even described faint, rhythmic pulses, similar to the ones the researcher had discovered. The stories grew, some factual, some exaggerated, but all suggesting one thing. The protector had never truly left. It had been present all along, hiding in plain sight. Governments began to notice unusual patterns too. Satellites detected energy spikes that did not match any known technology. Unexplained disturbances in communication networks occurred near regions where historical patterns showed the protector had appeared. Military analysts and scientists quietly discussed the possibility of a force acting independently of humans. While they could not yet explain it, the evidence suggested that Earth was not as unprotected as previously thought. Something had been guarding it all along. As the team dug further, they realized the protector's actions were not random. It seemed to understand the balance of nature and the needs of people. It acted with precision, always choosing the right time and place. For the first time, the researchers began to feel a sense of awe. They were not just uncovering a pattern, they were witnessing evidence of a being that had quietly safeguarded life on Earth for decades. And now, the signals indicated that it was becoming active again, possibly in response to changes in the world, environmental or otherwise. The realization left the team with mixed emotions. They were thrilled to witness something incredible, but also deeply aware of how little they truly understood. The protector's existence raised countless questions. Was it a living creature, a product of technology, or something entirely different? Why had it chosen to remain hidden for so long? And most importantly, what would happen now that its activity was increasing? For the ordinary people who had heard the stories as children, the mystery suddenly felt real again. Conversations in cafes, classrooms, and online forums shifted from myths to serious speculation. People remembered their parents' tales, old photographs, and blurry videos. They felt both fear and wonder, sensing that the world was changing in a way they couldn't fully explain. Meanwhile, the researcher sat in his small lab late at night, headphones on, watching the signal pulses move across the screen. He felt a strange calmness mixed with anticipation. The protector was no longer just a story from the past. It was becoming active again, and the world, whether ready or not, was about to witness something extraordinary. As the night grew longer, the team prepared for what might come next. They didn't know what form the protector would take, or how visible it would be. They only knew that history had been watching them, and the patterns were clear. Something was awakening, and it would change the way humanity understood its place on the planet. The protector had always been there, quietly guiding events, shaping outcomes, and ensuring survival. And now, with signals growing stronger and patterns emerging more clearly than ever, it was impossible to ignore. The world was waking up to a reality that had existed for decades, hidden in plain sight. For the first time in modern memory, people began to realize that Earth was not alone in its need for protection, and whatever had been guarding the planet was ready to act once more. The first undeniable sign came quietly, but it was impossible to ignore. Satellites recorded a sudden burst of energy in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, far from any known volcanic or tectonic activity. It was a strange, pulsing light beneath the water's surface, moving with purpose rather than random turbulence. Naval teams were sent to investigate, deploying underwater drones to measure the anomaly. The drones picked up tremors, rhythmic pulses, and metallic echoes that did not match any known marine animal or natural phenomenon. Then, one by one, the drones began to fail. Their cameras went dark, their signals interrupted, as if something too powerful or too strange for modern technology was nearby. A second team, equipped with newer and stronger equipment, recorded images that made even the most experienced scientists pause. The videos showed large forms moving beneath the ocean, shapes that defied conventional explanation. The pulses were synchronized with earlier signal patterns detected by the researcher, matching the heartbeat-like rhythm that had first been discovered months ago. Every sensor reading, every tremor, and every faint sonar ping pointed to one impossible truth. Something alive, or something aware, was emerging from the depths. Meanwhile, across the globe, people began noticing unusual phenomena. Seismographs recorded minor tremors in remote areas that had never been active. Weather patterns shifted unpredictably. Ocean currents acted strangely, disrupting the normal migration routes of marine life. Though scientists tried to explain these changes with natural causes, none of their models could fully account for the sudden and coordinated anomalies. Something else was influencing the planet, something no human had fully understood. On the surface, eyewitness reports started to emerge. People at coastal towns spoke of unusual lights in the sky and strange ripples. Across the ocean at night, fishermen described feeling a presence in the water, as if the ocean itself was aware of someone or something moving beneath it. Initially, these accounts were dismissed as exaggerations or hallucinations, but the growing consistency of reports from multiple locations made it clear that ordinary explanations could no longer suffice. The researcher and his team monitored the situation closely. By comparing the new data with historical records, they realized this was unlike anything that had occurred before. Previous appearances of the Protector had been subtle, often leaving behind only traces in photographs or minor anomalies in environmental readings. This event, however, was massive and undeniable. The Protector was no longer hiding in shadows. It was becoming visible in a way that could no longer be ignored. As the figure began to rise from the ocean trench, the world watched in disbelief. Military forces, equipped with cameras and advanced observation equipment, could barely capture its full form. Storm clouds swirled around it, lightning flashing against an immense silhouette. Rain fell in torrents, but the figure remained unshaken, moving with a calm determination that contrasted sharply with the chaos surrounding it. There was no weapon, no aggression, only presence and an undeniable sense of power. Scientists struggled to measure its size and composition. Radar scans reflected inconsistencies, as though part of the figure did not conform to ordinary physical laws. The pulses detected in the ocean and atmosphere matched no known rhythm from any creature or machine. Experts began speculating that the Protector might be part biological, part technological, and part something entirely unknown. Whatever it was clearly capable of moving through the ocean and air with ease, adapting to conditions that would destroy ordinary objects. Governments immediately convened emergency meetings. Leaders debated how to respond, weighing fear against curiosity. While some feared an unknown threat, military analysts quickly noted that the figure had shown no aggression. Historical patterns suggested that the protector had always intervened to prevent disaster rather than cause it. Still, the lack of control or understanding made everyone uneasy. The world was witnessing a force that could not be negotiated with, restrained, or fully studied, and that uncertainty bred tension. Meanwhile, the public reaction was intense. News outlets scrambled to broadcast footage of the figure, though the images were often blurry or incomplete. Social media exploded with videos and photos from eyewitnesses, fueling speculation and debate. People shared stories of past experiences, connecting them to the new event. Those who had once dismissed the protector as myth now found themselves forced to reconsider. The protector had been real all along, and its return was happening in front of their eyes. The protector did not act violently, but its presence had a profound effect on the environment. Ocean waves stabilized in areas previously turbulent. Hurricanes shifted slightly from populated areas. Lightning seemed to avoid striking certain regions. Birds and animals behaved strangely, moving in patterns that suggested recognition of the figure's presence. For the first time, humanity could witness not just the existence of the protector, but also its ability to subtly influence the world. The researcher and his team worked tirelessly to document everything. Using satellites, drones, underwater sensors, and ground-based instruments, they created a comprehensive map of the protector's movements. Each pulse, each tremor, and each environmental anomaly was recorded and compared to previous historical events. The patterns were undeniable. The protector had been acting as a guardian for decades, quietly shaping events to prevent harm. Now, for the first time in modern history, the full scope of its presence was becoming clear at the same time. Other scientists began to notice strange signals emanating from space. Satellites detected pulses that seemed to leave Earth, moving into orbit and beyond. It was as if the awakening of the protector had sent a signal to the cosmos. While it was too early to determine whether this signal was intentional or a byproduct of the protector's activity, the implications were staggering. Earth was no longer isolated. Something about the protector's presence had made the planet detectable in ways that previous observers might not have noticed. Military and scientific teams debated the implications. Was the protector a threat to humanity or to other intelligent life in space? Could it be a warning signal, or was it simply acting according to its own purpose? Analysts speculated on its origin, suggesting possibilities ranging from an ancient guardian built by a forgotten civilization to a naturally occurring force that had gained awareness over centuries. Whatever the explanation, the conclusion was clear. The protector was real, and it had begun to act openly. Despite the tension and fear, there were also moments of wonder. People reported feeling a sense of calm near areas influenced by the protector. In coastal towns and near ocean observation stations, residents described a quiet reassurance, as though an unseen presence was watching over them. Scientists observed animals responding to the figure in ways that suggested recognition and trust. It became clear that the protector was not an agent of destruction, but a guardian of force that acted to preserve life and maintain balance as hours passed. The figure rose higher from the ocean, its form partially visible through rain and clouds. It seemed to scan the world below, moving slowly yet deliberately. Satellites recorded energy readings that had never been seen before, pulses of a strength that defied conventional physics. The world realized that the protector was not merely a local phenomenon, it was global. Its awakening would affect not only the oceans and the atmosphere, but potentially the entire planet. The researcher and his team knew they were witnessing something unprecedented. For decades, they had pieced together clues, studied signals, and examined historical patterns. But now, reality had surpassed their expectations. The protector was real, awake, and fully active. The implications for science, for humanity, and for the planet itself were immense. Every observation, every measurement, and every story collected in the coming days would become a critical record of this historic event. People around the world waited in anticipation. Some watched live feeds, others gathered in small groups to discuss the strange phenomenon, and many sat quietly, hoping for a glimpse of the protector. Everyone felt a mixture of awe and fear, knowing that something far beyond human understanding had returned. For the first time, humanity realized that Earth had a guardian one that had been operating in secrecy for generations. And now, the protector had fully awakened. As night fell, the figure began to move toward deeper parts of the ocean, leaving a trail of energy and environmental shifts in its wake. Scientists continued to monitor every signal, pulse, and movement, realizing that this was only the beginning. The protector was awake, visible, and active, and its presence would shape the world in ways no one could yet fully understand. The awakening had begun. The legend had become reality. And for the first time, humanity could see the forgotten protector of Earth, not as a shadowy myth, but as a powerful, present force that could no longer be ignored. While the protector's presence became undeniable on Earth. What no one had expected was the reaction beyond the planet. For centuries, humans had assumed they were alone in the vastness of space. Yet, advanced observation satellites picked up strange signals from nearby star systems, pulses that were triggered the moment the protector awoke. Scientists could not explain these signals, but they were precise and intelligent, as if someone or something was watching and taking note. For a small circle of astronomers, the data raised an impossible possibility. Earth was no longer invisible. In distant regions of the galaxy, alien civilizations that had long been monitoring Earth noticed changes immediately. Some had already classified humanity as a minor species, barely worth attention. They had observed human history quietly, marking technological progress and societal patterns. But the sudden surge of energy and activity on Earth forced them to reconsider. The signals were unusual, structured, and extremely strong. Analysts within these distant councils studied the data, cross-referencing it with historical records of past cosmic interactions. They realized that a guardian, something immensely powerful, had activated on the planet. For these alien observers, the presence of the protector was both frightening and intriguing. Ancient archives suggested that forces like this existed rarely, sometimes in other parts of the galaxy, but never near a planet with intelligent life as young and untested as Earth. There were mentions in cosmic records of civilizations that had encountered such guardians and had been forced to retreat. Those records described events where ships were destroyed or repelled without a single shot fired, often leaving civilizations cautious of nearby planets forever. For the first time, these observers understood that Earth was not simply a fragile world. It had a defense mechanism unlike any other. Back on Earth, scientists monitoring the protector's movements began to notice anomalies that could only be explained by an external awareness. Patterns in the energy pulses suggested the figure might be reacting to more than just the immediate environment. Perhaps it was sensitive to other intelligence nearby, or maybe it had a broader understanding of cosmic activity. The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. The protector might not only watch over Earth, but also be aware of forces beyond the planet itself. In alien council chambers, discussions were tense. Scholars, commanders, and analysts debated the implications. Some argued that humanity could be underestimated, but others reminded them that it was the guardian that made Earth dangerous, not humans. If they interfered, the protector would respond, and no known technology could easily overcome it. It was a force of unimaginable scale, acting independently, and it was clearly intelligent. For these observers, the awakening of the protector was a moment of high alert. The galaxy, for the first time in centuries, paused to watch a single planet very closely dot as the news spread among humans. Governments started sharing limited information about the Protector with international scientific teams. While most of the public remained unaware of the cosmic attention, scientists analyzing energy emissions began to suspect that Earth's disturbances were being observed externally. Certain energy spikes were not random. They appeared to react to signals from space, creating a feedback loop. Every pulse sent by the Protector seemed to ripple outward, touching satellites, space stations, and possibly much farther. Meanwhile, ordinary people who had begun noticing small anomalies on Earth felt an even stranger presence. Animals acted as if they sensed something watching beyond the skies. Birds altered their flight paths, flocks turning away from seemingly empty areas. Marine life, already reacting to the Protector's activity in the oceans, appeared agitated by a presence above and beyond the planet. Researchers documented these changes carefully, realizing that Earth itself was now a theater where unseen observers were paying attention. Humanity, unknowingly, had become part of a much larger narrative. The Protector's awakening had sent ripples far beyond the planet, and those ripples were being carefully studied. Alien civilizations that had once ignored Earth were now re-evaluating their records, marking the planet as unusual and potentially dangerous. The Protector's intelligence, judgment, and ability to act decisively made it far more than a myth. It was now a known quantity in the eyes of distant watchers, a force that could not be controlled, predicted, or manipulated. The researcher who had first detected the signals worked late into the night, overwhelmed by the implications. Every data point suggested that the Protector's influence extended farther than anyone could measure. And if that was true, then Earth's security was no longer just a matter for humans. The planet had a guardian that acted independently and had drawn the attention of entire star systems. The thought was humbling and frightening at the same time. Humans had spent centuries thinking of themselves as fragile and unimportant. Yet the Protector had suddenly changed the rules. Governments and military organizations quietly analyzed the situation, trying to understand the cosmic implications. Some feared that other civilizations might attempt to interfere with Earth, believing the planet weak. But historical patterns of the Protector suggested that any such interference would be met with resistance. No aggressor had ever successfully challenged it. That reality created a strange sense of security for some leaders, mixed with anxiety. The presence of the Protector made Earth safer, yet it also made the planet a point of interest for intelligent life across the galaxy. As days passed, scientists began noticing more patterns. Energy readings from the Protector's activity were fluctuating in ways that mirrored distant stellar events. Pulses from distant star systems seemed to respond to the Protector, almost like a conversation. While humans could not decode these signals, the idea that the Guardian was interacting with life beyond the planet was undeniable. Earth, long considered isolated and fragile, was now part of a cosmic network, observed and perhaps respected by forces far stronger than humanity could imagine. The public, still largely unaware of these extraterrestrial developments, focused on the Protector's visible effects. People who lived near oceans or storm zones reported strange calmness during storms, unusual light patterns in the sky, and animals behaving in unexpected ways. Scientists explained some of these effects with environmental anomalies, but none could fully account for the scale of the events. Something was watching, acting, and protecting on a level that extended beyond human comprehension. In this unfolding story, humans found themselves witnessing history. For the first time, the existence of a Protector, once considered myth, was undeniable. And now, the awakening had consequences far beyond Earth. Alien civilizations had noticed, scientists were documenting it, and ordinary people were experiencing its effects. The planet was alive with activity, but not all of it human. Something greater had returned to watch over Earth, and the galaxy was taking notice. Even among scientists and leaders, the scale of the situation was hard to grasp. The Protector was no longer a local guardian. Its influence, its intelligence, and its awareness reached beyond Earth. Historical myths, blurry photographs, and old signal patterns were now seen as a prelude to something much larger. The planet's safety was no longer just a matter of human action. It was a delicate balance maintained by a force that had existed for decades. Quietly, efficiently, and now openly as the days turned into weeks. Energy readings stabilized, but signals from space remained active. Alien observers continued to monitor Earth, cautious and curious. Some theorized that the Protector could communicate indirectly with other civilizations, sending pulses that warned, guided, or protected. No one on Earth could interpret these signals yet, but their presence suggested intelligence far beyond human understanding. The world, though unaware of the cosmic implications, began adjusting slowly. Scientists documented environmental effects, governments updated protocols for unusual activity, and people reported experiences that were both calming and awe-inspiring. The Protector had shifted humanity's perspective. The planet was no longer a passive entity in the galaxy. It had a guardian, an independent force that could influence events. And that presence had drawn attention from forces far beyond the solar system. By the end of this period, a clear understanding emerged among those who studied the events closely. Earth was no longer a planet of minor concern. The awakening of the Protector had made it important in ways humanity had never imagined. It was a turning point, a moment when ordinary life collided with forces both extraordinary and unseen. Humanity had a guardian, the Protector, and the galaxy was watching. The balance of attention, power, and observation had shifted, and everyone, knowingly or not, was part of this new reality. The Protector, silent and vigilant, had become more than a myth. It was now a force recognized beyond the planet, an observer, a guardian, and a signal to the universe that Earth was no longer unprotected. And as humans continued their daily lives, working, dreaming, and wondering, they were unknowingly living in a world watched by a presence both unseen and powerful, while the galaxy itself adjusted to the realization that Earth had awoken something remarkable. As the Protector became more active, humans began noticing subtle but undeniable changes. For years, the figure had worked quietly, unseen, often only leaving traces in photographs, reports, or environmental anomalies. But now, with its full presence awakening, humans could sense it more clearly. Scientists detected energy pulses in oceans, mountains, and the atmosphere, while ordinary people reported feelings of reassurance during storms or other dangerous events. Birds and animals reacted as if aware of something watching over them, moving in ways that suggested trust or caution. It was a pattern of protection that humans had never experienced before, and they could feel its effect without fully understanding it. The researcher who had first discovered the signals continued to track every movement and pulse. He noticed something unusual. The Protector's activity seemed to respond directly to human attempts at communication. One night, he and his team sent out a series of controlled energy pulses from instruments near the ocean, carefully mimicking the rhythmic patterns they had previously recorded. To their surprise, the pulses were answered. Slight vibrations, subtle movements in the water, and energy fluctuations returned almost immediately, following the same pattern. It was a form of communication, deliberate and intelligent, though not human in its design. This discovery thrilled and terrified the research team. For the first time, they realized that the Protector was not only aware of humans, but could respond to them in some way. This response was not through words or gestures, but through energy patterns and environmental effects. Each pulse carried information, a message too subtle for humans to fully interpret, yet unmistakable in its intention. It was clear that the Protector was intelligent, aware, and capable of interacting with humanity indirectly, Meanwhile, governments and scientific organizations began discussing what this meant for the planet. There was a mixture of fear and hope. Some worried that trying to communicate with the Protector might provoke it unintentionally. Others believed that if humans could establish some form of understanding, it could lead to unprecedented protection and guidance. Scientists began coordinating carefully, sending pulses and observing the responses, trying to learn what the patterns meant. Every experiment was meticulous, slow, and cautious, but each provided more clues. The Protector seemed to understand the intentions behind human actions and responded accordingly, confirming that it was not only observing the planet, but also evaluating its inhabitants. Ordinary people, unaware of the exact science behind these experiments, experienced the effects in other ways. In coastal towns and near large bodies of water, residents reported that storms seemed less destructive, even when forecasts predicted significant damage. Animals behaved in ways that suggested recognition and comfort. Some reported seeing flashes of light in the night sky, gentle and rhythmic, as if acknowledging their presence. The planet itself seemed calmer, safer, and more harmonious, as though the Protector was guiding natural forces to prevent disasters. But humans were not the only ones watching. Distant civilizations in the galaxy continued to observe Earth with intense curiosity. The signals from the Protector, now amplified by its activity and by human attempts at communication, reached distant star systems. Analysts and alien councils noted that Earth was no longer a minor planet. It had awakened something intelligent, powerful, and responsive. The signals suggested a level of protection that could not be easily challenged. In many ways, the galaxy understood that the Protector was acting independently, not for humans or aliens, but according to its own sense of purpose, to protect the planet and those who could not protect themselves. The research team, aware of these possibilities, remained careful. They focused on documenting interactions, studying energy patterns, and understanding the Protector's behavior. They realized that while it was safe to observe and send cautious pulses, direct interference or aggressive attempts at communication could be dangerous. Historical records suggested that the Protector had always acted to prevent harm, but its power was far greater than any human technology. The responsibility weighed heavily on the team. They were now the intermediaries between humanity and a force that had existed for generations. Quietly guarding the planet Dot as they continued, the patterns became clearer. The Protector responded more quickly to pulses that were rhythmic, deliberate, and calm. Chaotic or aggressive signals were ignored. It was evident that the Protector could sense human intent and act accordingly. The team realized that the figure was testing them, evaluating whether humans could be trusted to interact with it responsibly. Each successful response provided more data, more understanding, and a stronger connection between humanity and the Protector, though not in words or speech, but in mutual awareness. On the ground, people continued to experience the Protector's influence. Communities near disaster zones reported that accidents and natural events were mitigated in subtle ways. Structures were preserved, floods were redirected, and fires slowed as though guided by an unseen hand. The presence of the Protector brought a sense of reassurance to those who had once feared storms or other dangers. People could feel, even if only subconsciously, that someone or something was watching over them. This effect was universal, not limited to one country, culture, or continent. Scientists, meanwhile, began to hypothesize about the nature of the Protector. Could it be an advanced intelligence, possibly created by an ancient civilization long forgotten? Was it a naturally evolved being, sensitive to energy and capable of influencing environmental systems? Or was it something entirely beyond human? Understanding, a force that existed to maintain balance on the planet, regardless of human activity? Every theory had merit, Yet none could fully explain the complexity and intelligence exhibited by the Protector Dot. As humans and scientists attempted to establish cautious contact, the Protector also demonstrated an awareness of other forces nearby. Alien observers, who had long been monitoring Earth, seemed to take note of the Protector's responsiveness to humans. Some civilizations retreated slightly, aware that any direct interference could provoke a response from a force far beyond their technology. Others began studying ways to observe without being noticed, realizing that the Protector's power and intelligence were not to be underestimated. During this period, several extraordinary events occurred. In a remote coastal town, a powerful storm threatened lives and property. Residents braced for destruction, but the storm weakened unexpectedly, moving away from the area entirely. Witnesses described a strange glow on the horizon and subtle changes in wind patterns. Scientists later analyzed the event and linked it directly to the Protector's activity, correlated with pulses sent from the research team. For the first time, humans could see a direct, observable effect of their cautious communication with the Protector. The researcher reflected on the implications. Humanity had always assumed that survival and protection depended solely on human effort, technology, and planning. Yet here was evidence that a higher intelligence was acting on behalf of the planet and its inhabitants. The figure did not demand recognition or control. It acted silently, observing, judging, and intervening when necessary. Humans had become part of a larger network of understanding, a planet protected by a force both intelligent and deliberate. As days passed, the interactions became more refined. The Protector's responses grew faster and more precise. Energy pulses sent from human equipment produced immediate feedback, environmental shifts, and subtle signals that could be measured scientifically. Each observation strengthened the sense that humans and the Protector were building an understanding, an unspoken agreement that while humans could not control the figure, they could coexist and communicate responsibly. The public remained largely unaware of the cosmic scale of events, but they felt the consequences. Communities experienced less destructive weather, fewer accidents, and a growing sense of reassurance. People began sharing stories of their experiences, describing flashes of light, sudden changes in wind or water, and animals behaving unusually. While some dismissed these reports as coincidence, others connected them with the old legends of a Protector that had always watched over humanity. Meanwhile, the researcher and his team continued to document every pulse, every movement, and every environmental effect. They understood that humanity had never witnessed anything like this before. The Protector was not a myth, not a machine, and not a human. It was something entirely unique, a guardian that operated on its own terms, capable of influencing events for the better while remaining largely invisible. Humanity was learning how to coexist with it, to communicate carefully, and to respect its intelligence. The awakening of the Protector had created a turning point. For the first time, humans could observe a higher intelligence acting in harmony with life on Earth. They were participants in a process far beyond their comprehension, learning not only about the Protector, but also about the delicate balance required to maintain planetary safety. The figure did not interfere unnecessarily, but it acted decisively when needed, demonstrating judgment, awareness, and purpose. The Protector's influence was now undeniable, felt in subtle ways across the planet. It guided natural events, responded to human signals, and remained vigilant against unknown forces. For the first time, humanity had a true guardian, a being that acted on its own intelligence to protect life and maintain balance. The world was no longer solely in human hands. Earth had awakened a Protector, and humanity was learning, slowly and carefully, to recognize and respect it. As days turned into weeks, the Protector continued its quiet yet undeniable presence. Humans had learned to observe without interference, sending cautious pulses and monitoring its responses. The figure remained vigilant, moving across oceans, mountains, and skies, subtly guiding natural events to prevent harm. Its activity was no longer a mystery to scientists. They understood that every action was deliberate, measured, and purposeful. Humans were witnessing not just protection, but judgment, intelligence, and care on a scale far beyond their comprehension. The cosmic observers, distant civilizations that had long monitored Earth, continued to watch in awe and apprehension. They had initially feared that humanity or the planet itself might pose a risk, but the Protector's calm, deliberate actions changed their perspective. It did not attack. It did not seek domination. Its only goal was to maintain balance and ensure survival. Analysts across the galaxy began to classify the Protector as a unique force of nature, an intelligence not bound by technology, culture, or politics, yet fully aware of life and its fragility. Back on Earth, ordinary people continued to experience the Protector's influence in subtle ways. Farmers noticed crops surviving unexpected storms. Fishermen reported calmer seas. In regions previously considered dangerous, urban areas that should have been hit by accidents, floods, or fires found themselves spared at the last moment. People spoke quietly of a presence, often describing a sense of reassurance during times of danger. Children, animals, and even the weather seemed to respond to the Guardian in ways that felt natural yet extraordinary. The research team, who had been studying the figure for months, began to understand its intelligence more clearly. It was not acting randomly. It had goals, patterns, and priorities. The pulses, movements, and subtle environmental changes were all part of a complex system of observation and intervention. The team realized that the Protector had been silently guiding humanity for generations, shaping outcomes to protect life without ever revealing its full form. Its awakening marked a new phase one in which humans could interact cautiously and learn from its presence, while the Guardian maintained control of larger, unseen forces. 4. The first time, humans began to feel a deep connection with something larger than themselves. Scientists described it as a form of indirect communication, a conversation conducted in pulses, vibrations, and environmental shifts. While humans could not yet interpret all the messages, they could sense intent. Each response from the Protector carried reassurance, warning, or guidance. Humanity was learning humility, patience, and awareness in a way no classroom or book could teach. Meanwhile, the distant observers in the galaxy adjusted their monitoring. They realized that Earth was no longer just a planet to watch. It was a planet to respect. The Protector's intelligence and judgment made it clear that any interference would be dangerous. Slowly, alien civilizations began to pull back, observing from afar without direct action. They understood that the Guardian was not human, not technology, and not even an animal. It was a force of balance, capable of protecting life in ways no civilization could challenge. The world began to notice subtle changes in the environment as the Protector continued its work. Storms that should have caused destruction were diverted. Earthquakes shifted slightly, reducing damage in populated areas. Forest fires slowed, rivers flowed in steadier patterns, and even animal migrations became safer. These effects were gradual and almost imperceptible at first, but over time, people recognized a pattern. Something extraordinary was guiding the planet, quietly maintaining harmony and safety. The researcher who had first discovered the signals reflected on the journey. From static-filled recordings in a quiet lab to the visible activity of the Protector across oceans and skies, humanity had come a long way in understanding a force far beyond its own power. It was no longer a myth. It was a conscious, deliberate guardian of Earth. The realization brought both awe and responsibility. Humans were now participants in a larger story, one that spanned generations, the planet, and even the galaxy. Protector's presence also influenced human behavior. People began to take environmental and social responsibility more seriously. If an unseen guardian could act with such care and precision, humanity realized it needed to act with awareness, respect, and cooperation. Communities became more mindful of disasters, prepared in ways that complemented the Protector's interventions. People learned that their actions mattered, not just to themselves, but to the balance the Protector maintained as months passed. Scientists and researchers documented patterns that confirmed one truth. The Protector's activity was steady and deliberate. Its movements followed natural cycles, responding to environmental stress, potential danger, and human activity. It did not intervene unnecessarily. It acted only when needed, balancing protection with autonomy. In doing so, it allowed humans to live, learn, and grow, while remaining safe from events that could otherwise be catastrophic. Alien observers took careful note of this approach. Some began to study the Protector's intelligence, comparing it to known civilizations and technologies. They concluded that no known species could replicate its abilities. Its awareness, judgment, and control over natural forces were unmatched. For the first time in recorded galactic observation, a planet had a guardian that operated independently, not out of desire for control, but out of a purpose rooted in preservation and care. The Protector became a symbol, even if humans did not fully understand it. Stories of its influence spread quietly, shared among those who had observed its effects firsthand. People described moments of reassurance during storms, accidents that ended without harm, and animals behaving as if guided. Over time, these experiences became a new type of legend, not one of fear, but of hope and balance. Humanity began to feel a deep sense of connection with something larger, invisible yet undeniably present. By the end of the first year after the awakening, the world had changed in subtle but meaningful ways. Humans recognized that they were not alone in their need for protection. They understood that life on Earth was being guided by an intelligence beyond comprehension. This knowledge did not create fear. Instead, it inspired caution, responsibility, and gratitude. The Protector's role was clear. It was not there to control humans, but to ensure that life could thrive despite dangers, natural or otherwise. The researcher and his team reflected on the cosmic perspective. The distant civilizations monitoring Earth had learned to respect the Protector. They understood that direct interference could provoke unpredictable outcomes. Earth had become a planet of observation and caution, a world with a guardian capable of influencing forces far beyond human or alien technology. The Protector had shifted the balance of power not through aggression, but through wisdom, intelligence, and restraint. As the years went on, humans continued to learn from the Protector's presence. Scientists developed better models of environmental systems inspired by the subtle guidance of the Guardian. Communities prepared for natural events with greater awareness. Children grew up hearing new stories of hope, protection, and unseen guardians. People came to understand that life on Earth was fragile, yet it had a Protector that acted with precision and care, ensuring that humanity could continue to thrive. In the final analysis, the awakening of the Protector changed humanity forever. It was no longer a myth, a legend, or a forgotten story. It was real, intelligent, and present. It had reminded humans of their place in the world, the fragility of life, and the importance of awareness and responsibility. At the same time, it had shown the galaxy that Earth was not an ordinary planet. It was a world watched over by a guardian, respected for its balance and care. The Protector continued its vigilance, moving across oceans, skies, and mountains, subtly guiding, observing, and maintaining balance. Humans could sense it, communicate cautiously, and learn from its presence, but they never controlled it. Its purpose was singular: to protect life, maintain balance, and act as a guardian beyond human comprehension. The story of Earth, its protector, and the galaxy watching quietly had reached a new chapter. Humanity had learned humility, awareness, and connection. Life continued, storms and disasters were mitigated, and the world thrived under the watchful presence of a guardian that had always been there, quietly waiting for the moment to awaken. The forgotten protector of Earth had returned, and in doing so, it had changed the fate of the planet and the understanding of life itself. And though no one knew exactly what the future held, one truth was undeniable. Earth was no longer unprotected, and humanity had a guardian watching silently, wisely, and endlessly, forever present, forever vigilant.